Welcome to On the Brink with Andi Simon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Andi, and as you know, my job is to get you off the brink. And I like to bring you interesting people who are going to help you see, feel, and think in new ways, just like an anthropologist might. I can't take you exploring, but I'd love to. And I can take you to look at different businesses or industries so you can see what would be relevant for you. And besides, they're also different. But every time I bring someone onto the podcast who has a perspective to share, I'm just in awe. The world is so diverse today and so full of interesting, exciting people, and they do just what we preach. They take their observations and turn them into innovations. And they know who they are so that when they talk, they begin to tell you about yourself. So think of this as an echo, a mentor. And here I have this wonderful woman today, Jessica Fairchild. I was honored to do a panel with Jessica at a women's summit at the beginning of March in Chicago. And here was this beautiful woman. While she's an attorney, she's going to tell you a lot more about what she is and who she is. And that's the point of today. Is what you do who you are? And how does it open up doors for you? Remember, if the door doesn't open, you can't go through it. But being who you are helps you go through that door and then figure out how to mix and match it so it fits. Jessica, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's so great to be here, Andi. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. But let me tell you about why you should listen to Jessica. She has a beautiful bio. She's a co-founder and partner of Croke, Fairchild, Duarte, and Beres. She'll tell you about the merger of two firms into a different firm and what that means, but that comes next. She's established a reputation as a thoughtful, practical advisor who provides business-focused solutions for her clients. She's in Chicago. As a co-chair of the firm's management committee and partner at Croke, Fairchild, Duarte, and Beres, Jessica is able to serve her role as a lawyer, a law firm leader, a women's advocate, and an entrepreneur. Now, those are four different words, but they bring together a very interesting woman. She co-founded Croke Fairchild in 2019 after having worked in several other law firms, which she had founded and managed. So there's a theme here, right? Over her 24-year legal career, Jessica's principal legal focus has been on corporate mergers and acquisitions and governance matters, where she counsels founders, boards, and private equity sponsors, family enterprises, and corporations on their most strategic transactions. Her focus on building relationships and her client-centered approach has helped her garner many long-term clients whom she's worked with on M&A matters and beyond. A general counsel for the growing organization. She's frequently been recognized as one of Chicago's top women lawyers, including being recognized in Crain's Chicago Business 2024 Notable Women in Law. Now, I'm not going to read much more, but I am going to let her tell you about her own commitment to doing all kinds of interesting things. If there's a thread here, she really brings her expertise to help others do better in their business and in their private lives. But her journey hasn't been a straight line. If you read this, you think it's straight line, boom, boom. Now, I will tell always the story I love to share. When I met my husband, I was 19, so we've been married a long time. How long is not terribly important. But we're sitting on a beach on Spoon Lake, and he says, and now what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I'm either going to be an attorney or an anthropologist. And he says, oh, be an anthropologist, and I'll be here for you. Well, I guess in today's age, maybe I didn't need the will be here for you, but he has been here for me. I've gone studying people in Greece. I've taken my daughters on field trips to Greece for several months. He's always been here for me through 3 books and all kinds of excursions. And I can only tell you that you need a partner who understands who you are, but you also need to know who you are. Jessica, who are you? Tell us about your journey. It's
Oh, I
nice to
love
see you.
that.
Don't
Thank
you
you
love
for
that?
sharing that story. I've known my husband a long time too. He never said that exact statement to me though. But I think that's right. I've been through a journey, and if you read my bio, it sounds like, it's kind of been a straight line, but it hasn't. And I've had to make choices and pivots in my career to get where I am now and to be in a role that I'm really, I think, very comfortable with now that allows me to be myself and to go out in the world and do what I love, which is helping people and particularly helping women, but helping people. And I've been an M&A lawyer for 25 years now, almost 25 years. So that means a lot of helping people achieve their goals, right? Transactions are about two sides coming together to meet a goal. And you become very people oriented, very process oriented, very about getting goals done for people and being very thoughtful about how you do that. And I just love the world I live in now. And I can talk about how I got here, Andy, but where I'm able to go out, connect people, help people achieve their goals. And at the same time, I'm doing that, right? I'm running a business. I'm also an M&A lawyer, but I'm also running a business and I'm doing a lot of things outside of that or related to that that get to put a lot of people together and I think help a lot of people and women, which I'm really excited about. So I'm glad to be here, and if I can get into more detail, I'm happy to do that.
Well, I know you didn't just parachute in. And I also know that the story is full of twists and turns. And I think that stories like yours help people understand that they don't really know the destination. It's a journey. So, give us a little sense of how did you decide to go to law school? And then, what happened as you got there to move you into another realm? And, being good at running a business has come with experience and expertise. So I am going to push you a little bit more to tell us about your journey, not the destination, because you haven't reached a peak yet, but now we have some destination journey stuff to tell us. Help.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I do think of my job and my life, and my career as a journey, and I'm still on it. I'm still on it very much and excited about where I am, but also what's in the future. So I decided to go to law school because I was an undergrad major in accounting. And when it became time to think about being an accountant, it didn't feel right for me. It just didn't feel right. I was great at numbers. I always was. I just didn't see that as a career path. And I looked around and I said, what can I do now? And I happened to take a very interesting undergraduate course called business law that I enjoyed. I liked the professor, I liked the topic, and I said, what about law school? Right? I'm not ready for a career in accounting. That's just not what I wanted to do. And what about law school? And I didn't have any lawyers in my family immediately. So that was just kind of a new way of thinking. And I followed my gut that it would be interesting. And even if I never practiced law, which I have, obviously, I thought it would be an interesting foundation. So I went to law school right out of undergrad. I didn't work, I went right out and continued my career, also not knowing what kind of law I wanted to practice, but that was okay with me. I
Uh-huh.
knew I was going to get a great education. I went to a school I was really excited to go to, learned a ton, and that led me to really understanding that I probably wasn't cut out for sort of a litigation role, that I really liked bringing people together, doing transactions, doing deals that were additive and creating something. I also just, as an aside, I grew up with, entrepreneurial mother and entrepreneurial parents that had businesses of different types. And so I think that's in my blood a little bit.
Yep.
That's kind of part of who I am. Leading the way, founding my own businesses was something that eventually, led me eventually to that stage, after law school. So that's how I went to law school, and there was no magic to it. I didn't know I wanted to do it when I was a kid. I just sort of fell into it, and it's been a great career path for me, one that I've been quite happy with.
Now, did you become a partner in this firm, or did you sample other kinds of things? I mean, and it is interesting because I have other women friends who are attorneys, they're lawyers, and they have built their career from the Women's Bar Association with really focusing on for-profit and not-for-profit and, building a firm with others. And it's been really interesting for them. Is that what you did as well?
Yeah, I know you've profiled a number of lawyers in your books and materials, and I'm sure you've had many guests on that had a legal or are practicing. I got into a large law firm right out of law school, and it was great from a training and learning perspective. In Chicago, we were doing very large transactions, very big deals, and a lot of great training. So that was my sort of proving ground, I guess, if it were. And then I wasn't sure what I wanted, but one day a very interesting opportunity sort of presented itself to me to go work specifically with one client and be the general counsel for what then became Chicago's Olympic bid. So Chicago bid for the Olympics, and while I thought I'd be there for a short while, the short while turned into 3 years, and you know. It was a very eye-opening experience for me. It was a risk because it meant sort of raising my hand and saying, maybe what I'm doing isn't quite for me in the way that I was doing it. It put me out in the front. There was, no team or net around me, and I was able to build a legal team. And I just looked at practicing law differently. I had a different clientele around me. I was surrounded by brilliant people, most of whom were not lawyers, who were challenging me and challenging our group every day and doing things that I'd never done before. And that was really eye-opening for me to say, okay, maybe there's a way personally to practice law that's not in that larger law firm setting. It was a very entrepreneurial, fast-paced environment. Things were happening every day, every week, and I liked that. And I learned that was a kind of part of my learning process, as you talked about. You've got to learn what lights your fire. You've got to learn where you thrive and what you feel best doing. And I think that led me, it led me further down this path of maybe the large law firm wasn't for me any longer and getting comfortable with that was okay, if I wanted to leave there. So I didn't make partner, but I ended up leaving, at about the 10-year mark. I left that, former corporate law role and then that in-house general counsel role to start my own law firm. And that made sense. To me, that made sense. To a lot of other people, that was confusing. But for me, I felt kind of following my own path, the one that was before me, and trusting my instincts and trusting in myself, that it was all going to be okay. And that's what I did, Andi. I left that sort of more comfortable
Yeah.
approach to start my own law firm. I think that was back in 2010. And that's gotten me, as I can get into, gotten me to where I actually am today.
But I once took my archetype and I'm an explorer. And then I took let's see what, a culture index, and I'm a philosopher. I have a hunch there's a little bit of those in you as well. And a lot of an entrepreneur that your parents have imbued in you without you even knowing it. Because just the way you said it, I'm going to start my own firm. That's what an entrepreneur would say. I don't need the boxes of the big firm. And I really liked working on the Olympic Committee, but that stopped. And so now what? Oh, I'll figure it out. I'll make it up. and, and how did you make up? What did you make up?
Yeah, you're right. And I felt that I needed a time away from that environment to kind of figure out the next step. And I really didn't know. I didn't know if my firm would be successful, but it really let me be in the driver's seat of growing a business, more than anything. How do I grow a business? Okay, it's a law firm, but now I'm growing a business. How do I make relationships? How do I network? How do I make contacts? And how do I manage to a budget? And how do I grow? Right? And I was lucky. I was able to over time. I didn't have a business plan. I regret not having a business plan going into it, but that's okay. I had to learn my way, right, to running a business and how do I balance the time I spend on running a business and that sort of stuff with the legal work and actually getting client work done. So I was able to grow that and I learned a ton. I learned a ton. And I also I learned some things about, mistakes that I made. We're all not perfect. We make mistakes. And there were some ways I had to pivot and make changes to what I had done. But I was doing it for a while on my own. And then, I had some people who were willing to come along the journey and the process with me. And that led to kind of where I sit now is that smaller firm that had grown a little bit. In 2019, I sort of decided to roll that firm into what I have now with my partners who you read the names, Patrick Croke and Drew Beres and Lisa Duarte. And that was another inflection point because I had been running my business. I had been making all the decisions largely. I had brought on one partner. And now, I felt like there was more opportunity out there. And I felt like if I found partners that even more so saw the world the way I did, I also, managed to spend a little time worrying about my kids. And now my kids were getting a little bit older. So I felt like, okay, I have more time that I can now dedicate of my own back into the business side of things. And that's why I sort of pivoted again and said, okay, these partners who I haven't known that well, bear in mind, I didn't know everybody super well. We had some common connections. I felt like the fit was just there, that they had the same sort of drive and thoughts around how to grow a business, how to run a law firm maybe in today's world. And I felt like we could do this together. And I think we could do it really well together. And that was sort of the start of the next phase, right? Moving back to a little different law firm environment, and then we're going to grow a business with some different partners, and that's been really exciting. And I'm glad I did that. And it didn't, Andi. Lastly, it didn't take me long. I knew right away I can do this. I can do this with them. The fit is right. The time in my life is right. And I'm going to do this. And of course, we didn't have a perfect plan, but it was time for the next phase. And as you just, the explorer, I felt like I needed the next phase, then my learning, my growth, my development, and that was the right one for me.
Well, when we talked, it was interesting because while you do law, you're running a business. Um, are you an attorney? Yes. But the things that you bring to the table aren't just good legal practice, but lots of wisdom about how to build a business. And all your partners they all have different skills. And I've seen too many law firms with everyone with different skills, but no rainmaker, and no business management. And that's nice, but doesn't work very well. And in fact, we had dinner with a friend of ours, and he was a rainmaker. And he says, all the folks who work here are counting on me to keep making rain. It's getting really hard to make rain. The manufacturing's disappeared. The businesses are getting older. And he said, and I don't know what's going to happen to them when I'm not here to make rain. And so this is a business as much as it is a law firm. And I do think that technology is changing things as well. And, there's just lots of competition for it. So some wisdom that you've discovered about what works and what you might not do again. Any thoughts?
Yeah, great question. And I think that, it's hard to build, there's a historical culture in law firms in terms of the work ethic, the in-office before pandemic, and now it's shifting back. It's sort of an everybody in the office and an up or out type of, I mean, that's the world we live in. It's cutthroat. And to your point, if you can't make rain, maybe there at certain firms, there's no positions out over time because that's what you're supposed to do. And so we've focused a lot. We're about, just to be clear, we're not the biggest of the law firms in the world. We've got about 100 lawyers, but we've moved from about 10 to 12 to 100 in about 5 years. So a lot of growth, and we've been able to attract some really great talent out of sort of the legal realm. And part of that, I think one of the lessons that I think we've learned or we felt is really important is, not one size fits all at our firm, allowing people at different points in their career at different times to have more control over the direction of their career. So if you're a mom coming back into the workforce, or if you're a person, man or woman, who's taking care of ill parents, right? Or if you just can't work, it's too much in your life if you're billing 2,000 or 2,500 hours and you want to pull back a little, you still have a lot of value to add. And we've been able to find a lot, not that everybody's like that. We have people who are probably more traditionally working the hours, but that you might see at a big firm. But we've been really able to, grow by being flexible. We kind of want to meet people where they are and say, okay, we know you can add value here. And we can add value for you because we can give you the next phase in your career. And we can do it this way. So being flexible for us has been a hallmark of our growth. And that means also more flexibility on where you work and how you work. That doesn't mean, clients come first. We're in a client service business. Clients need to be happy. So that's the number one thing. But if you can achieve that, if you want to work, and we have someone who does that from Madrid during the winter and back in the States during the summer because don't want to be in that cold climate, we can accommodate that. So I think one of the big learnings and takeaways for us is that, we wanted to be flexible, and that's been successful. And we've gotten some of the greatest talent from big firms who just felt there wasn't that flexibility and it no longer worked for them. So that's one learning. For me personally, I like learning and growing and being challenged. And so being in an environment like this has been really wonderful for me. And I think that's true for a lot of our people. They like to be given room to grow and learn and develop. And we sort of practice law with a broader breadth than some of the other firms that I know, where you come in and you do one thing and you do that one thing and you're really great at that one thing and you can do it 100 times and you're going to be great at it. But at the end of the day, I personally wouldn't have enjoyed that. I needed more complication. I needed more opportunity. I needed to work my brain in a little different way. So we really practice law, particularly on the corporate side, but even on our litigation side. People are doing a variety of different things, and not just put it in a niche or a box. we want people to get experiences kind of across the range. And then maybe you're going to gravitate, but maybe you like me, like your everyday being different, whether I'm counseling, a venture client and then an M&A client and then a family-owned business and then a family office. I can do that all in the same week. And
Mhm.
to me, when I am practicing, that's the fun of it, right? The extending beyond
Yep.
just doing the same thing every day. And I really think we've been able to give people an opportunity to grow and to practice in that way that you don't find at every firm.
Well, but it also works for your clients, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You
It
I bet
does.
they think of you as an ally, an asset, but not a box. Where they're fitting their issues into your boxes, hoping that that box will solve their problem. But they all come with different ones. And now the question is, who's the right fit for that conversation? You remind me of an accounting firm I've been working with for 8 years. And as I've watched their youngers grow into elders, they've all given them lots of opportunity to become very different people than they started out. And I watch with joy because some of them have learned that part of their role is to educate the next generation coming in. And some of them have become really good at client relationships. And some of them have just been really good at the tax law stuff. And that ability to find your way has made very high retention and low turnover, which in their industry is unusual today, and lots of talent. And so it's a great way to begin to build. How's technology affecting you?
Yeah, it's that's on everybody's mind. It's the question of the day. We as the it's sort of like we're a smaller firm. So we don't have all the dollars and resources that you might find at the bigger firms, but we have a lot of flexibility, right? And we can move quickly. And so we are finding, look, there's an appetite, a real appetite, both from the client side and our attorney side to understand how AI and other technological advancements can make our lives easier, can
Yep.
make things go faster. How do we do that? And it's challenging. So we've incorporated some AI, but are looking deeper at to, trying to find all the right products because it's not a one size fits all, right? You've got to find what works for your people, what works for your firm, the type of work you're doing. So we're in that exploratory process. We're using a few things that I think are sort of, early tests for us. And I think they're having value, but I think there's even better products out there and they're just getting smarter, better, more available. A lot of firms are developing their own AI products. Maybe we'll get into that game, but I think we're at the cusp of something big. I think we're still at the cusp though, because there's a little bit of a distrust, and then there's a learning curve. It doesn't just show up on your computer and everybody knows how to use it. That's you've got people of different generations with different technological experience. So we're finding that anything we're going to roll out when we roll it out really needs proper training. And that's obviously for the bias issues we've heard, but just to make it usable, for people to really use it. So when last thought on that, we're looking at that both not just on the attorney side, but just our staff and our professional staff. How can AI and how can the technological advances we've seen help our staff generally, improve processes, work faster, be more efficient, avoid some of that, sort of boring stuff that makes the day-to-day boring. How can we find other tools to do that? So we're very much on the hunt for that. And I think we're going to see it's going to take a little bit because lawyers especially are probably wary of technology and, as a general. So it's really getting the wide adoption through the training and understanding of how it's going to help everybody be better. But I think the people are here to stay. I think we're going to need people to manage these tools, to work with these tools. So I don't sit here, oh, I'm worried about the legal profession. I think we're going to be here. It's just how to use these tools to do what we do even better.
You mean the legal profession has never changed? And all of a sudden now, I have a hunch they have always changed, but never paid attention to the changes that were coming. I had one situation in a Vistage workshop I was doing, and one of the firms had hired an intern, and they had a new software that they were having difficulty figuring out what to do with. And this young intern came in, being a video game folks, and in about 10 minutes, he had figured out how to use it to create a whole new solution for a client. And it was so good, they took it to the client who said, "This is fantastic. Who did this?" And, and they said, "So now we know it's the younger who can help us figure out what's really cool." But they think differently, and that's good. if we can respect it and not make them think like we think. And video game is amazing training for the new world of technology. The metaverse is not so bizarre. It's bizarre, but it's not so bizarre that it's not going to be a training ground for the next generation of people who are going to help you in the legal profession. And then the elders have to figure out how to be respectful, because their wisdom is not easily duplicated by youngers. And so it's going to be an interesting time. And of course, how we build becomes an interesting question itself. Is it ours or wisdom? What are you really paying for? And how do we make it equitable in a way where we can speed up, but also be compensated appropriately? And these are big questions to raise, right? And I bet they're the same ones in your M&A world and the same ones in your family firms. And the more we can get ahead of it, the better it's going to be for all of us.
Yeah, there's a
Interesting.
lot to be seen, right? We're at the cusp of something big. I mean, real change, and we're gonna see how it plays out. I get paid for my hours, but to be honest, if I can be more efficient for my clients, that's great. Our clients love it, and we make them happy. I don't. We've got lots of clients to serve. We have more clients we can always make relationships with. So finding better ways to do things, to be more creative in how we do it, and open to that creativity. I think those are the firms that are going to do well. And I do see a lot of adoption. I think it's coming. Law firms are going to be using lots of products. It's just getting everybody to buy in and understand how it's going to help, not hurt.
Well, it's true. And but to your point, as a brand, you're building a brand on being innovative and flexible. And what does that mean in a stage and age where the news coming in unusual ways? So it's pretty cool. Are there any trends in the new lawyers coming into the practice that are worth sharing in some fashion? Do they bring a different perspective? Women, men, I don't know. I love to know about the future a little bit. Someone once said you have among the top 20 futurist podcasts. I didn't know I was a futurist, but if I ask the right questions, we can reflect together. What do you see happening?
I do see, the young folks, and we've seen it now for not just the generation just coming into our law firm, but for a while, they really want to go places that match their values. You're seeing that, play out right now without getting in too heavy and too deep into the news. That people, and I think it's not just law, right? I think it's other areas too. People want to come out and they want to see and be part of a company that matches their values. And that means that the company's got to be clear on its values and how it's making decisions, how it's leading. And so we're also seeing, we're seeing the workforce, at least on the legal side. You asked me about, am I a lawyer? Is that my life? Is that really who I am? And we're just seeing people, maybe a little bit of more division between what they do outside of work and what they do for a profession and a career, where I have spent most of my career, leading with I'm a lawyer and I'm a business professional. Yes, I have children and I'm married and I have outside hobbies, but it was very much about my career. And I think we're seeing now generations where they want to have success in career professionally, but they also really want to have a separateness for their lives. And that's interesting. It's interesting when you're trying to train and develop and have the next generations, really, really own and really desire to be successful, maybe like I did coming through. So that's kind of a couple of trends. Obviously, the technological use, they're already there, right? Where others of us are trying to learn. That's innate. But I think those are the things I'd point out that we're seeing from sort of the younger workforce that we're engaging with.
Well, but this is very important, because if we're aware of it, we can think about the things they bring as an asset to our organization, and not as different or weird. And everyone, humans are bizarre. We want conformity. We want people to belong to us. And yet they bring fresh ideas that are hard to understand, but are really important. But to your point, I mean, I have wonderful daughters, and they've grown into beautiful young women. But one of my daughters once said, Mom, you say you're a corporate anthropologist who helps companies change, but you're also a great mom. And I went, oh. And now how do I weave into who I am as a great mom who's also a corporate anthropologist and help somebody change? And do I segment that in terms of the time when it matters, or do I rethink who I am? And I've met women who have been stay-at-home moms. And I think they're terrific. I just don't know what to talk to them about. And my daughter said, I don't know what I do as a stay-at-home mom. I said, I guess we would have figured it out. But at the moment, that's not who we are or what we do, is it? And you too have raised children into lovely folks, and somehow they've become lovely folks. I'm in awe of what my kids have become. They're all grown up and they have beautiful grandkids and happy marriages. So we did
You make an excellent, your point is excellent because these younger folks are pushing us, right? They're saying just because it was that way before doesn't mean why does it need to be that way now? And so as leaders who are, making all the decisions for the firm, and I do that with my, co-founding partners, they push us to be better, to think harder, to be really thoughtful about, what change and how to make change and also, one of the beauties is that we can pivot. We've pivoted as a firm. Our policies have changed. We've implemented things and it didn't take the way we thought, or there was a reaction, or we got really constructive feedback that maybe that wasn't the best way to do things. And we've been able to modify our approach. That's something you can do when we're at 150 or so total people. It's a lot easier to do than when you're, at a behemoth company.
Yeah.
We've been able to pivot, and we've definitely taken that feedback. And to your point, we want people to be in an environment where they can be heard, where they feel heard, where they're listened to, and they can come as they are, right? Their experiences, to your point, their life experiences add value to our environment. That's why they're here, and we should be listening. So we've done, and I credit my partners for a lot of that. We've done a lot of listening and changing and modifying, but that's the beauty of these other lived experiences when you can really adapt to make it a great place for everybody.
Not easy, because you don't even know how what you do sets the tone for what they come into, and you don't know how what they're doing is changing the way what you're doing. So, once had a client and he had all the youngers mentor the elders, and that was interesting instead of the opposite. And I'm going to teach them how to talk to us. It was a whole different world. It was fun. This has been terrific. I often ask as we wrap up two or three things you want the folks to remember so that they leave with some takeaways. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, one, try as you're coming through your career journey, try to find a place where you can be your authentic self. I've been fortunate enough to do that. Yes, I'm at a firm with my name on the door, and it seems easier, but I've worked hard to try to find and create an environment that I was really comfortable in and could let myself shine. So if you're younger and you're not at that place, well, then maybe that's not the right place for you. But I assure you, there's something out there where it would be. And then you've mentioned this a few times, and I truly believe this, that like a career is a journey.
Yes.
And it's okay if you know from the beginning what you want to be and where you want to be. And it's also okay if you don't. That certainly was me. And I've seen, I found those opportunities where I could make the most of them and I could be flexible to jump into something else. And it also involved risk and uncertainty and all of those things. But I think thinking of it as a journey and how each next step can help you grow and learn. That's been my sort of mantra. Okay, I'm going to learn something new, and if it doesn't work out, then there's something else I can do. So those are my thoughts that maybe your listeners would take away from our podcast here today.
If they'd like to know more about you, LinkedIn, or are there other places they can find your stuff?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, Jessica Fairchild at Croke Fairchild. We also have a firm website, www.crokefairchild.com. I try to put content out there and would love to hear from anybody who has questions about, we're a women-owned business, being a women-owned business, growing a business as a woman, or having a career in M&A, which is what I do, or anything else that struck a chord from our talk today.
I'm delighted. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me today. Let me wrap up. For all of you who enjoy coming, You put us in the top 5% of global podcasts. I've had people from across the globe come on and share. Jessica's from Chicago, not across the globe, but I'm always pleased when you send me suggestions. Info@andisimon.com or info@simonassociates.net. My books are all available on Amazon, and they're fun to read, even for me. After all these times, I mean, it's a really cool thing when you look back and say, oh, I wrote that. That's really neat, but it's fun. One's about women, and the second one is about women mean business, and the first book was called On the Brink, A Fresh Lens to Take Your Business to New Heights, and that's how we named this podcast. In some ways, I'm so thrilled that I created a podcast that I can share people with you. And sharing is what we're doing these days, much more so than ever before. And so if you have any wisdom you want to share with us, just get right back to us. Our job is to take your observations and turn them into innovations and then help you build a business. And I don't really care what the topic is. Somebody will learn from somebody else. And Jessica has done that for us today. Jessica, thanks so much for coming. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day. For all of you out there, have a wonderful day. Stay happy. That's all you can do. Be happy. Bye-bye now.